Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Mark Marex, product development specialist with Nasdaq Index Research, to discuss performance of the PHLX Semiconductor Index, otherwise known as the SOX. Mark, it's great to see you as always. Welcome back to Trade Talks.
Thanks, Jill. Great to be back.
And Mark, let's take a look at your first couple of slides here. Give us an overview of the SOX, including some of the companies that make up the market cap, as well as the market cap and country weighting.
Yeah, sure. So it's 30 constituents. It's been that way for a while now. The selection criteria for the index is purely what does ICB classify as a semiconductor subsector company. So this index has been around for almost 30 years now, since 1993. We cap the top 5 names at 8% each. You could see the top 5 here. These weights vary a little bit because the last round of capping was done a couple months ago now, but top 5, Intel, obviously very, very well-known name, kind of made its name in the personal computing business. You got Broadcom, Texas Instruments, NVIDIA at number 4, which NVIDIA has just been on a pretty much like a decade-long tear, on its way to becoming probably the most important semiconductor company in the world. And then Qualcomm rounding out at number 5, Qualcomm, of course, being the major kind of supplier to the Apple iPhones, and that's kind of how they've really expanded over the past few years.
And Mark, if we take a look at your second slide here, what are you seeing in terms of market cap weighting and, of course, demographically, where you're getting these market caps from?
Yeah, so it's a good little variation in terms of market cap. Obviously, there are a lot of large companies in this index. We do restrict the weighting with those 8% caps on the top 5. The rest are capped at 4%, so you don't get too much of a market cap skew. But not very many small companies here. I think there's one company that has less than $5 billion in market cap as of the most recent month end. And in terms of country, I mean, it is pretty heavily dominated by the U.S. The two kind of big exceptions here, though, are, you can see in the yellow, that's Taiwan, and in the purple, that's the Netherlands. So one company each in those two countries are very, very critical to the sort of global semiconductor market. Taiwan Semi has kind of become the dominant foundry player. They actually manufacture, outsourced manufacturing for a lot of the different kind of global players that just kind of do design in the U.S. They manufacture almost like 50% of global semis at this point, which makes Taiwan, interestingly enough, kind of an interesting geopolitical player these days, considering just how central semiconductors are to so many different devices these days, which was really not the case prior to the Internet of Things, prior to smartphones and smart cars and all of that kind of stuff. The Netherlands being ASML, another kind of big, outsourcing and design type of player. Very, very interesting company, very unique.
And Mark, we've heard a lot of news in the semiconductor space over the past year. What are some key recent developments with the biggest SOX constituents?
Yeah, so, looking at the top 15, it's pretty incredible. The last 12 months, average price return is almost 80%. You can see the big outlier here on the downside is Intel. Intel had kind of a rough year last year. This year so far, it's actually doing a little bit better. Some mean reversion there probably. But, again, kind of related to this Taiwan Semi development, because they've gotten so big in the outsourced semiconductor foundry market, they've kind of shot ahead of Intel, which is, again, one of those few remaining players that does both manufacturing and design. So the market, was getting concerned with some of the reporting, some of the comments from Intel last year about, sort of their positioning for the long term. But, outside of those, again, I mentioned NVIDIA, which really kind of got its start supplying the gaming industry, right? Semis for gaming consoles, things like video graphics, now is in a ton of computers, in a ton of kind of advanced AI machine learning type systems in cars. And then AMD also at the end there, up almost 86% over the last 12 months, also has had tremendous growth over the last decade. On the right-hand side is just a quick, overview of the fundamentals for these companies over the past 5 years. You can see revenue in the purple, that's been growing at a compound annual rate of about 10% a year. And then earnings actually growing even stronger than that at about 22% a year. There's a bit of a dip in 2019. 2020 just kind of blew away all expectations. You know, there were a lot of weakness in many sectors of the economy, but semis, because of the stay-at-home play, because everyone was buying, you know, laptops and smartphones and tablets and gaming consoles because they were stuck at home to work and play last year, really kind of supported, you know, the top and bottom line fundamentals for this index.
How has the stocks performed relative to other benchmarks?
It's been really solid. I mean, last year outperformed even the Nasdaq 100, which had one of its best years on record. Year before that, 2019, also outperformed. Here we're looking at just a quick 3-year view. So versus the S&P 500, which is about 40% up over 3 years, it's more than tripling the S&P 500, and it's got a decent margin ahead of both the Nasdaq 100 and the composite as well.
And Mark, let's wrap with assets under management trends. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, so the big player in this market is the iShares ETF tracking this index. But there's also a couple products from Direction as well, some leverage products. That's on the left-hand side. That's a 3-year view in US dollars of AUM. You can see 3 years ago, we were a little bit above 2 billion. Recently, we touched 10 billion in February. So really nice growth there, a combination of returns and inflows. On the right, we've got the product in APAC from Cathay. You know, bit of an up and down story since they launched in May 2019. But actually, again, recent weeks, we've seen them approach, if not set a new record in terms of total AUM, getting close to about 2 billion in Taiwanese dollars. So pretty nice growth, pretty nice fundamental story. You've heard about those shortages. A lot of that is COVID, a lot of that's temporary, but there's a part of it that's kind of long-term as well, again, as there's more demand for these products in any kind of device with internet connectivity. Really compelling fundamental story.
I would also like to bring in Joyce, head of APAC with Nasdaq Indexes, to discuss the ETF market in South Korea. And Joyce, we understand that Marex Asset, the key player in South Korea, has just launched the very first SOX ETF. How do you find the investor appetite for the SOX ETF and in general the thematic tech in the region?
We're very excited about establishing and growing the partnership with Marex in Korea and providing more choice for investors in the market. With the launch of the PHLX Semiconductor Sector Index ETF by Marex, it provides a no-cost solution for investors to access one of the best performing sectors in the world and enrich the market with more thematic products available for investors. We continue to receive demand for different types of thematic products in this region. The demand accelerates since last year as more investors realize how they rely on different types of new technologies in their daily lives from the new law. Since last year, there's a tremendous demand in the region to try to gain exposure on Nasdaq 100. With the index performance delivered last year, issuers are taking further steps, actively looking for more thematic tech solutions in which they see growth potentials, providing their clients with the transparent product to capture the investment opportunity. As we can see a trend of product development, there will be more and more products rolling out in the market, focusing on the thematic tech space. For Nasdaq, we have a long history of delivering innovative thematic index ideas to our clients. We will certainly continue our efforts working with our partner to bring more new ideas and products to the region.
Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.